Welcome back, tribe. Got an episode here from Lit Nomad, Why I'll Never Get Married. He says it's obsolete. Well, it's about to be. Let's see.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm going to talk about why I'm not married today. So a lot of people are like, bro, you are such a good catch, man. You're like 5'10" and a half. Like, that's tall for an Asian dude. And like, you went to an Ivy League school and, you know, you're a quant. You're so smart. You should get married. You'll make a woman happy. And they're not wrong, you know. I always wanted to kind of have a big family. And, you know, I watched like The Sound of Music. And I was like, that would be cool to kind of like make my kids line up like that. And anyways, like I wanted to get married and have kids, but I don't know. I'm a data-driven person. I'm a quant, so I analyze the data, and it just doesn't make business sense. First, the divorce rate is 50%, right? That's awful. Like, you have to remember that 50%, that's divorce. Divorce is the last resort for most people. So what that means is that like over 90% of people are like miserable in their marriage. Because you have to understand, like, people get divorced when like you have to pay the lawyers so much money, and you like traumatize your kids. Like, they're going to be so sad. They're going to have to require all this therapy. And if you have like extended family that's conservative, they're going to be like really ashamed that you got divorced. And yeah, your local community is going to shame you. Oh my God, they're going to gossip. Oh, they just didn't work out. And that's like kind of embarrassing. And so you know, you go through all of that and you still get divorced. If you're religious, then like you're going to go to hell probably, depending on like what religion you're into. So like that's, despite all of that, you still get divorced. That means you really want out. And so, what that tells you though is that 90% of people are like miserable in their marriage. And you know that's true because it's like in the cultural zeitgeist, right? Like if you watch like Seinfeld or like Everybody Loves Raymond, like the grandparents, like the parents of Jerry Seinfeld are always depicted as these like bickering, miserable couple. And everyone can relate to that. That's why they depict them that way. And with like Everybody Loves Raymond too, like they depict them that way because everyone's like, oh yeah, that's how my parents act. Because that's so common. And why wouldn't it be common? People are miserable after being stuck with the same person for that long. You know, it's not natural.
It's true.
The other reason is infidelity. So data on this varies widely because it's hard to get accurate data on something like this, but it ranges from like 20% conservatively that have cheated on their spouse to like
I'll push back on that. It's not natural to be with one person that long. Sure, biologically, maybe you can make that argument somehow. And then human society on top, like culture, forced monogamy, I guess you could say that. But there are genuine people on a spectrum that would prefer one partner for the rest of their lives and they'll be happy. They don't have the tendency to step out or they need that variety of partners. That's not everybody. And I'm sure it would be a wonderful experiment if we could figure out like percentages, how many people really are monogamous in nature versus, you know, everybody else that would like to be in a polyamory, polygamy, all that other shit. Who knows, you know, with like multiple partners or just going their own way completely. You know, some people nowadays actually don't want any relationship whatsoever, you know, like asexual and stuff like that. So I don't know. Certainly, though, you can find people that are truly monogamous. Will you find them in modern society today? Not really. Not in the hyper-sexualized society that we have today. So yeah, a lot of what he's saying is true. That is why a lot of guys are doing the whole passport thing, because you really do have to completely change the culture of where you're getting married, the society that you're going to be getting married in, or if you're going to bring her back to the United States, again, make sure that she's foundationally strong with the traditional conservative mindset, values family, kids, a husband, man, masculinity, all that stuff, God, far more than she would value something like getting on TikTok or Instagram or posting online, social media, all that stuff. The red flags are shown. I made a video about the red flags. You know, her relationship with her father is foundational in all that other stuff, you know, coming down like house of cards on you.
70%. And let's put the average at like 50%. That's pretty terrible. 50% of people have cheated on their spouse. And, you know, it's the type of thing that people are going to like lie about, either to themselves or to a survey. So it's probably higher. But let's just put it at 50%. And that's awful. So regarding infidelity, right? I had a friend who was an EMT, like an emergency medical technician. And he told me something really interesting. Basically, the main reason why he would get called to people's houses is that they would be having a heart attack, or they would be thinking they're having a heart attack. But it would just be like a panic attack. And when he gets to their house, like, the guy would like confess to them, like, immediately. They like grab him and be like, and they would tell him like they cheated on their wife like 7 years ago or something.
What the hell?
And he'd be like, okay, thanks for sharing that. We're gonna get you on the stretcher here. And he said it happens to him a lot. Like, he's only been working the role for like a year, and he said it happened to him like 5 times. And I found that to be like quite noteworthy, because these people, right, even though they got away with cheating, they had to carry the weight of infidelity in their heart. And they didn't really get away with it in that sense, because it was like a splinter in their mind that they had to live with for the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's like based in Christianity, and that's why they thought they would go to hell if they didn't like confess to someone before they passed to the next life. But nevertheless, for one reason or another, like, they kind of like suffered through the guilt of that infidelity. And so yeah, of the 50% who cheat, without a doubt, like, you know, some people got away with it, and they didn't really get away with it. It's kind of like the point I'm making with that story. Mm-hmm. Those are terrible odds. 50% divorce rate, 50% infidelity rate. Like, why would anyone sign up to something with those odds? And the answer is because they've been culturally shamed to do that. You know, people are very much like sheep. They don't think for themselves. And they don't think organically from the bottom up. They just kind of feel peer pressured into doing things. Yeah, everything about marriage, modern marriage, is just a recent invention. You know,
modern marriage.
The white wedding dress, I think, is from like 1840. And, you know, that's the last 200 years. The diamond, you know, that's just a brilliant marketing campaign by the De Beers Corporation. Mm-hmm. I think in the 1920s, when they said that a diamond is forever. That's arguably the greatest marketing campaign of all time. So now people buy diamonds. It's become the standard, when like there are other like rare gems that are more expensive, you know, and they just kind of artificially keep the price of diamonds high just to like profit off of you. Like, honestly, the De Beers.
Yeah, they turned marriage into a commodity. Almost everything today has been turned into a commodity. Once it gets big enough, popular enough, you have enough backing, enough support, there is a profit incentive in capitalism to somehow turn a profit on the very idea. Like, it could be, dude, it can get even political, like the 99% movement, right? The Tea Party, BLM, and whatever else that they'll invent or at least push on you. Like, kiwis, a superfruit. Everybody's buying kiwis now. Grapefruit, star fruits, all this, you know, whatever it is. No, this is why you need to take magnesium every day. Every single month, there's something that just hits the mainstream, and they start to sell the shit out of it, and you start to see advertisements and people talk about it. And it's the next big thing. It's just a fad. And the diamond industry, we're figuring out what the fuck they need to do with all these excess diamonds. And sure enough, let's concoct the greatest marketing scheme ever. Diamonds forever. A man needs to be spending 3 months' salary minimum on a diamond if he loves a woman. And you got women buying into that shit like crazy, just showing off the rocks, who's got the biggest one. And, you know, they start to give them out to all the famous people that all these people are following, because they're bots, they're NPCs. So on the red carpet or the Emmy Awards or all this shit, the Grammys, they got fat rocks on all these, you know, famous women that are whatever in the industry, music industry, film industry. And all of a sudden, the, you know, plain Jane at home, she wants a fat rock too. Well, what's the fattest rock you could afford for me, Ted? And now he's feeling the pressure both at home, both from art. And then like the system is just working against them. They have no idea that they're being manipulated into partaking. But that's literally what is happening to everybody today with every little single thing. Got to get an iPhone now. Why? Because if you text me and that shit is green instead of blue, you're fucking poor. So now most people in the United States have an iPhone. Peer pressure, right? Like, there's so much shit, dude. It's actually insane. Yeah. But as far as the culture goes, when it comes to dating and marriage, it's absolutely massive risk to get with a Western-minded woman who believes in career first, who believes in taking care of herself first, that she is above the family, that her money's her money, that you are just an add-on to her life, that you're not together creating a larger legacy than oneself could possibly create. When you have that kind of selfish mentality, that your goals are not bigger than yourself, or you're not creating something larger than you have the wrong person to be getting into a lifelong commitment with. And, most people that get married today is out of peer pressure that he said. It's like the pressure, not even peer pressure, but the pressure of feeling lonely, the pressure of being left behind, growing old by yourself and dealing with the consequences of never having anybody. And, life's really fucking lonely, dude, as you get older and your friends move on and they start their own families. And all of a sudden time with the boys doesn't exist anymore and everybody's doing their like adult shit and you're kind of left behind. Bachelor life, but boom, you wake up, you're like 65, bachelor life, and they're all going to their grandkids parties, huge family events, and they got some gusto in them to still live. Like everybody actually dreams of that for life. It's just like, where's a decent woman in the West to actually make that a reality, where the odds, the statistics aren't so fucking awful that they commit 80% of the divorces. Like what? They file 80% of them, of the 50 that fail. And that number's probably shot up once we start getting more and more, up-to-date numbers on that shit. So, and what are we doing? The cycle continues, yeah? Now we have kids out of wedlock that are growing up in broken homes where daddy's not present. Boom, worse and worse and worse.
Corporation killed it. That's a rabbit hole you should go down. It's fascinating. But this whole cultural norm of buying a diamond is... It's just like brilliant capitalism and marketing. There's no reason why you have to do that. But people are sheep, right? And when you think organically about human pair bonding, marriage is not natural. Human beings are not naturally monogamous. They've only been monogamous for the last few hundred years, mostly driven by monotheistic religions like Christianity, because this was before DNA tests, and they wanted a way to be able to kind of like accurately track parenthood. And so they wanted to keep people from, sleeping around too much, so that they can like find out who inherits the wealth of the father and so on. And there are other reasons you can go down those rabbit holes, but the point is it's a man-made invention. And human beings have been around for a long time. Homo sapiens, like 1 million years plus. And they were not monogamous for the vast majority of their existence. And even today, Homo sapiens, right? Like, of the 1,200 or so cultures that exist in the world, only like 150 or so are monogamous, and all the rest are not. And so, you can ask any scientist this, like...
And this is what I find interesting about this argument. I don't disagree, but what I find interesting is, of all the cultures, if you consider every culture like an organism, and the ones that are surviving and thriving and created the largest, most powerful societies, what was it that they had in common? How common is, for example, say like Christianity in these cultures, or monotheistic religions in general? How common is the concept of man and wife, marriage, and the extended family, or just the nuclear family in general, like, all together under one roof, working hard and getting ahead, right? It seems to me like those Bushman style, tribal cultures where it takes a village to raise a kid, so to speak, where the woman's just sleeping with all the dudes. So, the kid belongs basically to the village, and they never really evolved past those basics. Why is that? What was it that caused certain cultures to elevate so far above others? And why is it that the strongest, whether it's like European society, Asian society, Latin American society, whatever, you look at like, say, Japan and China versus, Europe and stuff, they have the same very strong family bonds. The family matters, education matters. Working for something larger than yourself, a family, and then using your family to combine with another family, and you enrich each other, then the son that you will be born or will have like the power of both families combined. Families keep combining, generations down the line. Wealth is built, power is built, land is acquired, all that shit. And why is it that system, whether they had monotheistic religions or not, but it seems like the family unit is the core at which the state then forms, and then civilization sprouts out of. Now, when we lack that, I don't know any polytheistic, polyamorous societies that have created like magnificent cultures to speak of, really. Like, Where are they now in the present, currently? I mean, we could read about some of them in history, but where are they now competing with monotheistic religions? You know, they got wiped out for some reason. Or whatever remnants of that is right now is like Bushmen in fucking the middle of the Amazon and shit, or Sentinel Island or something like that. Yeah.
Human beings are not naturally monogamous. And it's a recent invention. So it's like, why are we doing this? You know, we don't need it for like agrarian societies. You know, like we're not all farmers anymore. We don't need like to have a bunch of kids to farm our land for us. And we have DNA tests. So like the concern of like unknown parentage is like much diminished now. And so it's kind of like a holdover from a time.
Yeah, but that creates the best environment to raise a child. So here's where the theory falls flat. Again, why is it that when you give a child, a man and a wife at home, both putting in all their time, all their investment in nurturing, not just popping kids out and like, yeah, well, DNA test, that's good. And then I got shit I got to do. And the mom's busy at work too. And so the child gets neglected, right? All the care that they used to get from the village lifestyle where there was always an adult present now got reduced down to the nuclear family, but then taken away again because you got to work to support said family. So then your kid was given up to basically the state to be neglected, right? So it's like we're missing the key ingredient here to create well-mannered, confident, intelligent, future productive members of society, because nobody can invest into your child the way you could as a man and a wife. You understand? Maybe that's why this system works far beyond the rest. Maybe that's why, you know, inventions are concentrated in a certain part of the world, certain parts of the world. Oddly enough, those parts of the world valued the man and the wife together, raising a children, so on and so forth. And the societies that sprouted, takes a village where the mother doesn't really know who the father is, never really were keen on inventing crazy shit for some reason, right? Because like, how much time could you dedicate? You know, when you're putting all your resources into that one seed and you want it to be better than you and you want to educate it and you want it to do good in the world and you want it to compete against the other kids, the other families, right? You're busting your ass. Like, that level of investment creates a human that usually surpasses the previous generations. When you have generations forward quickly like that, that's how you have that scaling up of society. I don't know. It's certainly interesting. I'm not saying I have all the fucking answers, but I'm saying like the way we're headed is not the correct way. I understand that, you know, like he says, traditional conservative marriages are on the way out in the West, but will this culture that's arising from this new progressive style of thinking, will it survive a couple hundred years from now? Or will it be knocked down and taken over by a more traditional, family-centric, conservative culture? All right? Like this, if this is the organism and it's evolving before our very eyes, right? Look at our societies. Aren't they crumbling? Aren't people drifting further apart? Or don't we have symptoms that something is wrong and this is actually failing? We're going backwards in a way. Yes, we're inventing more things, but it's taking more and more people in order to have those inventions. Like compared to, say, Einstein's era, the 20s, 30s, we're absolutely exploding in progression with far less people in the globe, far less money and investments in set ideas. And now innovation has kind of slowed to a crawl. So I don't know. It's not at the breakneck speed we used to be in all aspects of society, like I said. But it's interesting to see, will this culture survive or not? It's already imploding on itself. So
That we're just kind of like holding over because human beings are not really original thinkers. And, you know, knowing that we're not naturally monogamous, it doesn't help when like modern culture, like mostly driven by modern feminism, is like it's kind of like normalizing infidelity on top of that. You know, people already cheat, now you're gonna normalize it. Like,
yeah,
a lot of girl shows like Scandal, the main character is like having an affair with the president and like hanging out with the first lady without her knowing, and like she's the main character and people root for her, like, oh yeah, you get it, girl. Like, it's like we have normalized, the Overton window culturally has moved to the point where we normalize infidelity. And so if the instinctual, like biological temptation to cheat wasn't enough, we are already we've normalized it culturally as well. Culturally, you know, we would try to shame that in the past. And I mean, that's been that way for a while. Like the 7-year itch is a Marilyn Monroe movie. It's the famous one where she's wearing the white dress and the wind is like blowing her skirt up or whatever. And like 7-year itch, for those who don't know, is like 7 years after a marriage, you feel the temptation to cheat. So you want to scratch the itch. And so that's like kind of addressing that, the 7-year itch. And it's like, why are we doing this? Why are we trying to make something work that doesn't work? Like, you know, trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. You know, when you go further back, right, like human beings, again, they're not monogamous, and it's just not in our instinct. Human beings, males especially, are they like variety because we have a lot of sperm and our DNA wants to replicate. So it's in our interest. The optimal mating strategy is to.
But is this what gives birth to civilization and societies and Renaissance periods and golden ages, when men are able to take control of their basal animal form, right? Their animal instincts of essentially doing that, squirting off into every woman as far and wide as you could reach? Like enlightenment, human enlightenment, isn't that part of the thing that we're all trying to achieve as we're living our lives? To take control of the automatic system here, this meat vehicle that we have, right? We're not supposed to be living on our base instincts, our whimsical needs, our lust, right? This addiction to sex and food and feel good, right? We're supposed to elevate beyond because we were gifted with consciousness, yes? So aren't we supposed to harness this power of our consciousness to elevate beyond our base animal form? To separate ourselves from all the creatures on this planet and usher in a new era, right? Where we're the stewards of planet Earth and, you know, all this shit. We're supposed to advance beyond what we are biologically capable. Like, if we go with this mentality of like, well, it's just not natural. Well, nothing that we do in this world is natural anymore. We've moved beyond what nature intended. That's the point. We've replicated and taken control of and will one day control nature itself, right? Mother Nature itself here on planet Earth. We're already harvesting her energy and all that shit. Pretty soon we're able to control when, you know, tornadoes happen and all this other fucking shit, earthquakes and all that. One day it'll be there, right? Shortly after that, we'll harness the sun's power in one way or another, as long as we don't blow ourselves up. So we moved far beyond what nature intended. None of this is natural. A lot of us shouldn't even be alive today. Medical intervention, medical marvels, inventions in the last 100 years is what's keeping a lot of people alive, right? It's like, if you make this nature argument, then most people here shouldn't even exist. Because nature rewards the strong. The weak die off. Only the strong survive, yeah? So how many people should not be around? It's certainly, man, like philosophical questions, you know, they're very interesting to ask, but, you know, in principle, in the real world, I don't know. It's, I find it fascinating regardless. You know, his questions, all same questions I've had. Certainly it has to cross your mind at one point in life when you're thinking about making a decision as big as starting a family or marrying a woman. And, you know, is this really worth it? Should I really be doing this? Is this natural? I have an urge for more women, blah, blah. You know, it's like, well, what path do you choose? Do you choose the path of the animal, or do you choose to ascend to a higher level and take control of everything? It's not easy, man. The answer isn't easy. Most people probably don't have what it takes, to be honest, to ascend beyond their animal form, their animal whims and needs. And that's the problem. Where do you find those kinds of people? Where do you, as a man, find a woman who can ascend past her biological wants and needs? Women are asking them the same shit. How do I get a man that's not a slave to his dick? I mean, fuck, dude. It's not easy.
Sleep with as many women as possible. Whereas for women, they only have one. They're only able to have one child at a time every 9 months. So paternal investment makes more sense for them. So the idea of like some Chad that'll like love them and protect them while they're pregnant and like, you know, bring them food in the cave while they're 9 months pregnant is like, that's really attractive to them, you know? And but it's not in our instinct to be faithful to one person. And so kind of like a bear at a circus that's like, you know, wearing a tuxedo and like standing on its hind legs, like, you know, with the ringleader like whipping it to like stand on its hind legs and act like a human. Like, that's not natural for the bear, right? But like, it's forced to act that way. And after a while, like, the bear it just wants to get back on all fours. It's like it's trying to get back to its natural state, and that's what we're doing as humans. Where, you know, when you're at your job and you're in 5 years into your miserable marriage and you haven't had sex with your wife in like a year, and there's a hot new secretary and you're like wanking to her in your morning shower, and
Jesus,
like, what are you doing, bro? Like, why are you putting yourself in this situation? You know, like, you naturally want variety. Like, why did you put yourself in this situation? Now you're lying to your wife. Like, she's like asking if you still desire her, and you're like, of course, baby. But you're lying. Like, and it's not your fault. You're a human. You're like that bear who's standing on his hind legs wearing the tuxedo. You're like trying to be something you're not, and your DNA is fighting against you. So you're like that bear, you know, you're trying to get out of that situation. And we can do better than that as humans, you know. We can do better than that as humans, you know. And I propose like new systems of pair bonding that make more sense. Polygamy makes sense to me, but they're tricky, right? Like, or like open marriages. At least there's honor in open marriages, right? I would consider an open marriage, you know, like how kings of the past would have a queen as like their main bitch, and then they'll have like side bitches, like concubines. Like, that system's happened a lot naturally in human like societies, organically, and there's a reason for that. It's because it makes sense. Like, they do that in every culture, you know. Japan does that. China like it's like so formalized. They'll have like apartments for their side bitches, and it's kind of like a Pareto principle kind of thing, because like top dudes will just have multiple women, and then everyone else won't get any women.
Yeah,
and that was naturally solved in the past because those men would just fight in wars and die off, so there wouldn't be like this uprising of like, you know, sexless men who are like salty that like some top dude is like getting all the women. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways to like potentially address this, but the whole like monogamy, like traditional marriage thing, it's not it, bro. And
yeah, but with the advent of technology where we're at, those guys are not dying in wars anymore, the bottom percentile males. So now you will have uprisings. Will there be destabilization? Will there be riots and the game being turned upside its head with new power systems being implemented to serve those bottom guys? Will they then become corrupt and become the top 20% and hoard all the women themselves too? And is this a perpetual cycle of destruction? It's interesting thought experiments to think about. But if the top 20% of men are hoarding basically 80% of the women and everybody else is left to starve, then doesn't your system destabilize eventually and you get overthrown because too many of those men build up? Because we're not tossing away all these extra bodies in wars no more. Where are all these extra guys going? Is this the advent of like AI girlfriends, virtual reality girlfriends and lifestyles? Is this the new way to pacify men? Like, since there's no more wars, global wars, or just regional wars, or just even, you know, like local wars going on between two places across the river and shit anymore, guys are dying. Is that the new way to pacify these millions of men that will be left without women, families, children? Certainly interesting to think about.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to remember that we were Homo erectus, right? And then since then, like the human species branched off, like the tree diagram from Homo erectus, it like split off to like Homo sapiens, which is us. There's like Homo Neanderthals, which is like, most Europeans are like 2 to 4% Neanderthals. So like Homo sapiens like mixed with Neanderthals, like interspecies, like sex and stuff. And it's kind of funny to think about, right? Because they were like pretty different species. They looked different. They were stocky, or they had different brains. And like, for your religious friends, you need to ask them, like, do Neanderthals get to go to heaven? Because, like, you know, how does that work? They're a different species, kind of, right? And anyways, and there's another one called, like, Denisovans that were mostly in Southeast Asia. There's, like, another one called, like, Homo florensis or something. They were, like, hobbits. They were, like, 3 feet tall. And these are humans. Like, do those humans have a soul? Like, there could have been a world. It's fascinating to think about. There could have been a world where all these different humans existed. So you think racism is bad right now because races are subcategories of Homo sapiens, but there could have been different human species, all because at a time they were all coexisting on the earth. There were like hobbit-like humans, and there were like these like stocky ogre-like humans, like the Neanderthals. And
giants.
I guess that might have been where like Tolkien got his inspiration for Lord of the Rings, because it makes a lot of sense, right? It's very similar. And I'm sure they had their own.
And then what happens in nature naturally happened. Competition, extermination. Some got out fucked, others got outright exterminated. So, yeah, that's why the 3-foot hobbits are no longer around, boys. They couldn't defend their lands. The next apex predator came, which at those times, besides, wild animals, which couldn't compete once the human population got large enough, was other humans that would invade your land, take your resources, your women, enslave you, use you for labor, rinse and repeat that cycle until there's just a few kinds of humans left. And the ones that were the most successful were the ones that survived only because they were maybe isolated from all the carnage, right, in certain areas of the world, were all that was left until you had one left. And that's us. Certainly, what an interesting world to think about, actually, historically speaking, that you had different kinds of humans alive. Our ancestors, cousins. Wow. Weird to walk up on like fucking New Zealand, right? And see these little fucking 3-foot hobbits on an island and shit. And over there with their little toothpick spears trying to stop you, and you're some fucking giant from Northern Europe that's like 6'5" and shit, surviving basically the ice age with your fucking fur coat, dude. You're just built like a tank. What are they gonna do to you? Jeez, man, what a world. And where are we headed? Now we're introducing technology. Yikes. Anyways, very interesting episode. I like this shit. Dude's a thinker. Definitely. And quants are cool as fuck. So, this channel's called Lit Nomad. If you want to see more, go subscribe. As usual, boys, appreciate you tuning in. If you haven't, sub to the second channel. We got heaters coming out all the time. And we'll see you on the next one.